Welcome to another special edition of the Jedi Podcast. I'm your host, Britney Galicia, and for today's special episode, we'll be diving deep into the significance of Race Unity Day. Race Unity Day has been making waves in the United States since 1957, thanks to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Bahá'ís of the United States. This meaningful date takes place on the second Sunday of June every year. And guess what? This year, June 11th marks the special day, so make sure to mark your calendars. To bring this important discussion to light, I'm here at the beautiful Santa Monica Bahá'í Center, where I feel like I'm surrounded by warmth and inclusivity. Joining me in person is a knowledgeable Jamshid Ashourian, and through the magic of technology, we'll be joined by Dr. William Smith, who is joining us via Zoom. And he is the founding director of the National Center for Race Amity. And Jamshid can give us a little bit more info on him.
Certainly, I'm delighted that you are here today. Actually, when I learned that Northeast Valley Health Corporation has a dimension for doing this work, it was so enlightening, and I was so happy. And I shared it with Dr. Smith, and we wanted to really welcome you to our Bahá'í Center. And we, of course, welcome the discussion on race unity and race amity. Dr. Smith is the leading director in this effort. He's been engaged in this effort for long, and he's a mentor and example, actually, to me, and I behold him as a dear brother and a dear friend. I just want to acknowledge that at the beginning. But Dr. Smith is a graduate of University of Massachusetts Amherst, and he is the one who is the founding executive director of National Center for Race Amity. And National Center for Race Amity has been doing great work throughout the years. And I know your time is limited, but if I'm going to do justice to Dr. Smith's introduction, his list of accomplishments goes on and on and on and on. Dr. Smith, which aspects of your work you like to highlight yourself? I have 2 pages here, and yeah. I know you by heart and by mind. Just please share something about yourself.
Well, I think, Jamshid, the important thing for our viewers or listeners to know is that actually this work of pursuing race unity and race amity actually is powered by our shared belief in the unity and the oneness of the human family. And that's important to mention because it is the glue that holds our spiritual brotherhood together. Jamshid and I are from totally vast different backgrounds. Him of Persian descent, Iranian descent, me of Southern African American, South Kakalaki descent. But what has brought our hearts together and our work together is this central principle in the Baha'i faith. And it compels us both as a matter of faith to pursue race unity because the central theme of Baha'i is the unity and oneness of the human family. So that's the rudder we try to use to steer ourselves. And in that process, it brings together strange bedfellows, and from diverse backgrounds and differences. And it steers us in some interesting ways in our lives, informs who we are. It steered me, for example, to go into Vietnam as a conscientious objector and serve in the medical corps as a combat platoon medic
Wow.
in Vietnam. But I only did it because I was compelled by the Baha'i teachings to be obedient to the laws of the land and to render service in the time of war, to suspend ideological thoughts and actually be of service and try and alleviate the suffering caused by war. So I wound up there. Prior to that, just in terms of my development and being steered by this belief, is I was one of the first blacks to integrate Division I football in the old Confederate South.
Wow.
By attending in 1964 Wake Forest University. And my roommates and I, we were the first blacks to play Division I football in the old Confederate South at Wake Forest. That was propelled again by a belief in service and the unity of mankind, and in that role, trying to live what I thought would be the demonstration of that belief. So everything that I've tried to do, getting into media, being an educator, being driven by the hope of service to that ideal of the unity and oneness. And it's really interesting, while you try to be of service, these tremendous blessings just sort of unfold. They're not anything that you've done, but I mean, I've met with the presidents of the U.S., the president of Ireland,
Wow.
all these places around issues of race unity, race amity. When we established the National Day of Honor for African Americans and other minorities who served in World War II, and had a grand White House reception when Bill Clinton was president. All of that was driven by the recognition and the hope for inclusion of all people to the contributions of this great nation. And it is a great nation, and its founding principle of e pluribus unum, of many one, articulates that whole feeling of race unity, of the unity of the human family. So in just sharing that, I'm sort of just trying to weave in a bit of my background, my experiences, and it helps support my pursuit of filmmaking, which we were blessed to do several things for PBS, several of which are still airing on PBS. The Invisible Soldiers, Unheard Voices, which is an award-winning film, and our being placed in the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame
Wow.
for developing that film. the invisible soldiers, unheard voices. And in that was some years ago, but presently we have an American story, Race, Amity, and the Other Tradition, which actually received the global Los Angeles Global Film Festival Best Feature Documentary Award 2 years ago. But that's still playing on public television stations around the country. But all of this stuff is driven by pursuit of this idea of unity and amity as a means.
Right.
Being too long-winded, so I'm going to stop talking.
Right.
So just trying to weave in some things to give a bit of my background and to let you know.
Yeah, that's
my
such an
connection
amazing.
with Jamshid, which he is truly my brother. I mean, the power of this thing is realizing the unity and oneness and embracing people that you otherwise would have no way of ever connecting with or knowing.
Right. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. That's incredible background and incredible work that you're doing with race unity. So for those of us who are a bit unfamiliar with the Baha'i faith, could you kind of explain to us some of the principles and its belief?
Jamshid, please.
All right, brother. So you refer to the diversity of backgrounds and still this loving connection that we have between us and many others who connect with us. Last evening here we had an event when the entire Santa Monica community, the interfaith and the civic organization were arising to reflect their support for us for this whole fact that we spread love and unity and believe in the oneness of humanity. Our Baha'i Center was vandalized a few weeks ago. Our windows were broken, and the whole community understood that, and this whole notion of oneness, they could not stand it. They came to our support. So in that light, reflecting on sharing some background about the faith, maybe I also tell a little story, and you can, I know you edit this, so please do what justice you want to do to this. But the Baha'i faith is the last succession in the main world religions that you recognize and you know. So, and the principle of the Baha'i faith, as Dr. Smith referred, one of the main principles is principle of oneness of humanity, which as Baha'is we believe is actually, in this time of age, is the spiritual truth, is a divine truth that is the remedy for many of the ills of humanity. You see, we are not only facing racial problems, as real as they are. We are facing many other kind of problems, whether economic, whether environmental, however you define them. We believe that the remedy for all of them is divine, and then divine message actually comes through this channel of oneness of humankind. And that message was born in the country of my birth, in Iran. And I thought I'll tell you a little story because my grandfather was the first one in the succession of my family who became a Baha'i on my father's side. My grandfather and his family were Jewish. My great-grandfather was a rabbi, actually. And he had built a synagogue, which was a historic event in Iran, in the city of Kashan. And I hope it is still standing after the Islamic Revolution. But the story is that during his time, because of the persecutions that the Baha'is were facing, the faith was like an underground message. And as it was the tradition in those days, the Persians in the summertime slept on the rooftop or in the front yard of their home. They put beds and benches and so. So one night in the summertime, the father, my great-grandfather, had a great guest who was a great rabbi from another city. Two of his sons were sleeping on the roof. I make the story short, and it has a point, by the way, I'll get there. The two of them started talking on the roof to one another. And the two of them on the roof in the middle of the night confessed that they had become Baha'is. And the father, who was sleeping with the guest in the front yard, heard all of that in the middle of the night. So the morning comes, they sit at the breakfast. They did not have tables back then. They would put this white cloth on the floor and all beautifully decorated and sit around it. So that when they are sitting there, the father, my great-grandfather, was sitting with his guest. And he began the breakfast by disowning his two sons.
Wow.
He said, I heard what you talked about. You know my stature, you know I am a rabbi of great stature here, you know what I have done. How could you have done this with me? The guest who was there turns to the rabbi, my great-grandfather, and said, call him, you are being unfair to your kids. And he said, am I? He said, yes. He said, why? He said, you didn't ask them what they believe in.
Right.
You just heard that they have become a Baha'i, and you disowned them. First, give them a chance to explain. So he turned to them and said, okay, explain to me what it is that you believe in.
Yeah.
And then they began to talk. They said, well, as Baha'is, we believe in the oneness of humanity. We believe in independent investigation of truth. We believe in the elimination of the prejudices of all kind. We believe on the essential foundation of all religions. We believe that all faiths are one. We believe that religion should be the cause of love, affection, and joy. We believe that the harmony of science and religion must be recognized, and so on and so on. We believe that there should be an auxiliary language where all of the peoples of the world can learn so that they can all communicate. We believe that all races are one and equal. And we believe that in gender equality, we believe in establishing a world parliament. We believe in basically abolition of extremes of wealth and poverty. And as these two brothers begin explaining all of this, and the fact that they believe again that human race is one and all should have the same level of opportunity and brotherhood and love, the father was basically blushing red. And he waits until the two finish their this, and he turns with his whole heart to them and apologizes. And he said, I am so sorry that I reacted too soon. If these principles that you are telling me are truth, these principles will conquer the whole world. Therefore, go ahead and practice these principles. And know that as a Jewish rabbi, despite my stature, I will not have any problem with you spreading this message.
Wow,
So
that is such a wonderful
really,
story.
you see, the story that I shared with you is a real story, and really is reflect on the principles that you want to do from the
Right.
very get-go of this faith. And those two brothers had three other brothers who also later joined the faith and became Baha'is.
Wow, that is so incredible. And I love that idea of just oneness of humanity and all of us in this together and helping each other out. And everyone is equal. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so I just want to add one more. I mean, Dr. Smith has shared this and so beautifully, and I cannot do justice to it. But I just want to say that this notion of race unity that the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States announced, you'd talked at once with me about the root cause of that.
Right.
Well, these principles that we are talking about is the root cause of it. That's where it came. You see, when you look at all of the history of this in the United States, that is only half the story. The other half of the story started on the other side of
The world.
The world. You see what I mean?
You're right.
The message started there. As we go on, we'll make some more comments. But Baha'u'llah was the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith who proclaimed all these messages. He passed away after years of exile from one city to another and finally to the city of Akka, which was Palestine back then.
Oh, wow.
It is now a part of Israel. And his eldest son we know as Abdul Baha. By the way, Baha'u'llah means glory of God. So, and as Baha'is, we believe that his coming fulfills the prophecies of all the religions of the world. Basically, we believe he is the one who has been promised by Christianity, by Judaism, by Islam, by Zoroastrians, by Buddhists, and so on and so forth. We can get into more details of that if whenever we know our time is short. I told you before we started that we need a day for this interview. We can't do it in an hour. But we're trying to share with you. So this is who Baha'u'llah we believe is. And we believe that this love and unity that he's spreading around the world is what we glue all of us together and we solve our problems. And then his eldest son was also exiled with him from early childhood when he was only around 8 years old. And they were exiled from Iran to Baghdad and to Constantinople, Adrianople, and then by the way of Cyprus to Palestine, city of Akka. So this whole journey actually fulfills the prophecies of the Old Testament and so.
Wow.
And you can follow that. But Abdul Baha is a character, a spiritual character that is unique in the entire religious history. Baha'is know him as mystery of God. Baha'is know him as master. He was imprisoned and with his father, and in 1909, after the Turkish Ottoman Empire revolution, when the Young Turks revolution took place and the Ottoman Empire actually came to an end, he was freed from prison. And he traveled at old age to Europe and came to the United States in 1912.
Oh, wow.
The contributions that Abdul Baha has made to the cause of race unity, I'm sure Dr. Smith will talk to it, it is unparalleled. I think while acknowledging all those great characters in the American history who have made contributions to race unity, I don't think anybody has yet studied and learned enough of what Abdul Baha did and who Abdul Baha was.
Right.
His contributions to race unity is just unheard of. And the one conclusion I wanted to make before I go back to Dr. Smith was, in one talk that we came, and I think I may have it here, he talked about the fact that he had come from the East and he had come to the West. He called it basically, and he had come from the East and come to the West, and the main purpose of his travel was to basically unite both. So in this essence of establishing race unity by the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States, you see this step towards that unity between the East and the West. This is the message of Baha'u'llah, who started there, came to the United States, and reflected in that decision.
Wow. Yeah, that is...
Dr. Smith, go ahead and
that
please add.
Yes, just before, because I know we're kind of going along this route as well, can you... I'm really interested in looking into the roots of this, because I know Jamshid spoke about that a little bit. Can you speak more about how this observance came to be, the backstory, the driving forces, specific figures or specific moments that created this day to what it is today?
Well, let me just thank Jamshid for that. Was such a wonderful story.
Yeah.
About your family and your ancestors, and it reinforces the miraculous to me personally as an individual, the miraculous power of spirituality and connecting hearts and connecting people from such a diverse beginning in your spiritual ties back down the line to Judaism. It's just a wonderful story. And you were talking about the beginning era in the Baha'i faith. And we've talked a bit about discussing how Race Unity Day was developed by the National Spiritual Assembly. And we talked a little bit about referencing and talking about race amity. And the middle part, when you mention Abdu'l-Baha, which is a very, very key element of the work that we do at the National at the National Center for Race Amity. And the importance of that is this. Abdu'l-Baha, after visiting America in 1912, and then having numerous Baha'is come visit him back in the Holy Land, in Akka, in Israel, and his study of the race relations in America, and to advance the teachings of Baha'u'llah, he actually asked a Baha'i, and this is very interesting, from Washington, D.C., to organize a conference whose aim would be to bring people together in amity. And that's when that word really began to appear in relationship to race relations. And for your listeners, if they go to YouTube and just type in Roots of the Race Amity Movement, there's a short 16-minute film that goes back and discusses the whole history of the development of the race amity movement in this country, which was initiated by Abdu'l-Baha asking a Baha'i in Washington, D.C., a white woman, Agnes Parsons, to organize a conference to bring the races together. He did this in 1920. The reason was that this country was suffering terribly from the Red Summer of 1919, when there were race riots, unprecedented and actually unparalleled to this day.
Wow.
In American history. And it centered on actually mobs of whites, principally attacking African Americans who at the end of World War I had come back. Many of them who served in World War I came back trying to secure the freedom that they had been overseas fighting in. And it just set off a wave of riots, race riots. I mean, it was called the Red Summer because of the blood that flowed in America from these race riots. And Abdul Baha asked Agnes to organize a conference to bring the races together to discuss ways of creating some harmony and unity. Agnes, a white woman of the 1920s, was not, any great feminist. She was not an Abigail Adams. I mean, she was a woman who had faith and belief in the oneness of mankind, but really was not a real serious activist. She didn't have a lot of black friends. She was in a power position in the Washington, D.C. community, well known. Her family, her father and her grandfather had both been the Secretary of the Navy, and she was well known in the social aristocratic circles of DC. But she also was a Baha'i, and in trying to pursue that basic belief, she knew of some other people in DC, particularly at Howard University, who were African American, who she reached out to, because essentially, these are not her words, but I don't know anything about Black culture, Black people. I do believe that we're one human family, but I need help with this.
Right.
So she reached out to friends at Howard University and asked that they help her organize this conference. Among them was Elaine Locke, the noted African-American historian who was the instrument for starting the Harlem Renaissance.
Oh, wow.
She asked, and he was, Elaine Locke was a Baha'i, and she asked Louis Gregory, who was an African-American lawyer from South Carolina, who had become a Baha'i, and who was very interested in promoting race unity. So they formed a group to organize this Race Amity Conference in 1921, the first conference, National Race Amity Conference. And over 2,000 people attended. There were the Secretary of the Army, senators from California, different notable political leaders were there. Frederick Douglass's grandson participated, and it was just a grand union of the human family, well, Blacks and whites, particularly in that era. And so that first Race Amity Conference in Washington got national news headlines, because the DC actually was one of the cities that was burned, and mobs attacking people and killing people. And so this was an antidote to that behavior. And it set off a series of Race Amity conferences around the nation, in Chicago, in Boston, in Springfield, in New York City, and so forth. Making sort of cutting the story short, the National Center for Race Amity decided on the 90th anniversary of the first Race Amity Day, the first Race Amity National Convention, to revive holding on the 90th anniversary National Race Amity Conferences. So in 2011, the National Center for Race Amity organized first a modern day National Race Amity Conference and we're now in our 14th year. And it's something that, again, I hope you will be shared with the listeners in this meeting. But it's an oasis. It's a spiritual oasis of unity and sharing and cross-pollination of people with good hearts and good ideas on ways to promote the unity of the human family and to celebrate that piece that is missing from our society and history, and that is what we call the other tradition. The other tradition of cross-racial, cross-cultural friendship that makes us advance toward social justice. We're all very, very familiar with the tradition of racism, the racist tradition in America. We all know too well, and we still encounter it. But what we're ignorant of is the driving moral power of racial, cross-racial friendship, which is, at the end of the day, the cause of advancing social justice and access. So that's just a quick overlook at the history of race amity. And again, if listeners and viewers go to YouTube and just do history of the race amity movement, they'll be able to see a wonderful short film that gives much of this history and the powerful organizations that have come out of it, like the NAACP,
Right.
which was founded as a cross-racial organization, the Urban League, same thing. All of these movements that have come out of cross-racial, cross-cultural, loving friendships. So I'll stop there.
Right. That was such an incredible YouTube video. I watched it myself, and I recommend everybody to watch it. Very educational and inspirational as well. But going off what you said, we are still facing a considerable amount of racial tension right now in the United States. And it would be incredibly valuable to gain a deeper understanding of why an event like Race Unity Day holds such an immense value to all of us here living in the United States.
Well, it holds tremendously value, Britney, in that it begins to move us out of what we meaning the National Center for Race Amity, it moves us from, in the public discourse, in the discussion of race, it moves us from the blame, grievance, rejection cycle, which we're locked in. And that's why we aren't making progress. You know, I blame white folks. You guys did it. You continue to do it. And I grieve it. And I want you to do something about it. And the overwhelming majority of white people say, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. And I get angry saying, well, yeah, look at the privilege you have as a result, blah, blah. And we get into this cycle. And until you own the fact that you guys created this, we're not going to really have any advance. Well, number one, if you want to have a relationship with somebody, anybody, about anything, the first way to advance trying to have a relationship is not to attack them. I mean, that's just, it ain't going to happen, man.
Right.
I don't care how you try to dress it up. Nobody wants to be the bad guy.
Right.
You know, if I say to you, oh, you did it, well, that's a non-starter right there. We think that if we can develop relationships among people that grow into friendships, that people will be more responsive and be able to work cooperatively. What is that based on? It's based on human sociology. The most important relationships, well, the most important relationship among human beings is family. We love our families.
Yes.
We do. Even those crazy people in our family.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a couple of crazies, right?
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
but you love them. They're family, right?
Of course.
But the next order of priority in human relationship are friends. Think about your friends.
They're like family.
They're like family. Some of them you exalt over family. I mean, my best friend, I tell people often, my brother Bob, who Jamshid knows very well. If my brothers or my older sister says something to me suggestive that may be critical, my response might be, hey, mind your own business. I got this. But if Bob makes that same comment, I listen totally different.
Right.
I say, boy, this is serious. Let me look, let me think about this, So the way friends affect us is different.
Right.
And to the extent that you develop relationships with people and friendships, you get an understanding that's you're more tolerant of their mistakes, and they're more tolerant of yours.
Of course, yeah.
If your friend says something and you know it's goofy and wrong, you don't just totally condemn them and say, "Oh, get out of here, I don't want nothing to do with you." You try and nurture them and help them understand whatever that point may be. And that's the same with dialogues around race. If I don't have any relationship with you, I ain't listening really. And if we start out by you telling me how bad I am, we definitely ain't going nowhere. But if I start out and begin to create a relationship with you where I know something of you and about you personally, I become more embracing, forgiving, and so forth.
For sure.
So, and if you see these two women I have on my T-shirt here?
Yes.
They epitomize, these are the godmothers of race amity, Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt,
Wow.
who had an incredible cross-racial friendship that made so much change in this nation. You would be staggered to know all of the things they did in their close cross-racial, cross-cultural friendship, including being responsible literally for the Tuskegee Airmen.
Oh,
That's
wow.
a whole other backstory, but it came out of a loving cross-racial, cross-cultural friendship. Again, I'll stop there. And,
wow. I'm gonna have to look into that because that seems really, really interesting. I loved learning about the red tails. It was such a enlightening.
When you go, we have a 5-part series that we developed for public television: American Stories, Race, Amity, and the Other Tradition. And in one of those 5 half hours, there is a story of the godmothers of race amity about Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt. Check that out. You can
I
find
definitely will, for sure.
WHS Media and all those films and stuff are there to look at. So anyway, I'll stop. And I'm going to have to get off in about 10 minutes or less. Really, I was supposed to be at something at 2 online, but we still have can squeeze out a few more minutes.
Yes.
And I'm sorry.
It's okay. No worries. So, can you expand further on how Race Unity Day actively encourages positive change? How does it spark open conversation, facilitate connection building, and create spaces for people to come together and try to overcome the differences that they have?
Well, it sets a platform. We build it, Race Amity Day, around the national credo, e pluribus unum, of many one. And that's on, you look at that dollar in your pocket, you look at that penny in your pocket, I think it's on the penny, e pluribus unum.
Yeah.
It's a forum where that's encompassing. We think and we promote the establishment of local, state, and national, and we're working on establishing Race Amity Day as a national day of observation. Many states have adopted it as a state day, Massachusetts being one of them. These are through actual political government actions. Maryland, there are about 5 or more states that now have Race Amity Day. But what it does is it promotes the idea that we come together in a day of appreciation of cross-racial, cross-cultural heritages, and to celebrate the fact that we represent of many one. And that's inspiring and uplifting. And people's tendency is fulfilled actually Anne Frank's observation, that she believes in the goodness of people. And there is, I think, overwhelmingly a goodness in people in our great land.
Yes,
and that if we can direct them to the opportunity, that goodness will be celebrated. And Race Amity Day is a formal way to give a platform to it so that people have a basis. And it does trickle down into all kinds of local endeavors to promote racial unity in local communities. Each year, there are well over 100 cities and towns that have Race Amity Day through proclamations from their city governments or mayors or whatever. Many have parades and music festivals and all those kinds of things.
Right. That's very wonderful. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to see if there was anything else that you would like us to know or anything you would like to share, or how can we make this observance more memorable for the people in our community, our coworkers, our family?
I would say go to the National Center for Race Amity website, and there are literally dozens of materials and ideas, everything from how people, a template for developing a Race Amity proclamation that you could ask, or people could ask the city council or mayor or whomever to embrace and sign. There are all kinds of materials that can be used for activities. There are templates for banner development, so you don't have to worry about not being a graphic artist.
Right.
To make a flyer. People have everything from potlucks to 5K runs on Race Amity Day. But all those materials, those resources are readily available to download on the National Center for Race Amity website. And that's at raceamity.org. Raceamity.org. Yeah.
Perfect. I just want to extend a very big thank you to Jamshid and Dr. Smith for joining us today and generously sharing their expertise and invaluable insights on Race Unity Day. Your contributions have truly illuminated the significance of Race Unity Day, and you painted a very vivid picture of what this means and how this fosters unity and understanding. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And how do we grab this blog? We want to promote this blog through we have a mailing list of over 5,000 people.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
That we can put the blog connect in our newsletter that will allow people to see this or hear it.
Right. Yes. So we will, once it's finished, we will go ahead and send you that link.
Okay.
And you will be linked right to it.
Okay, and then
Yes.
we'll post it in.
Yes, it will definitely be shareable.
We'll be happy to do that.
Perfect. That'll be so amazing. Thank you.
Jamshid, brother. So I love you, man. You know that.
Brother, thank
Yes.
you for sharing all you did. Thank
Yes.
you for joining. Thank you for taking
He put his
the
hard
time.
work
Thank you.
into setting everything up.
I want actually, the brother Smithy, even if you needed to leave, but I want to really propose to end this with some words of Abdul Baha, actually, because I really want you to hear some of even a to the extent of a mustard seed, let's say,
Yes.
because he talks with so much that at least I can share a couple of statements here.
Yes, of course.
And so, in one of his talks, for example, he said, "Love ye all religions and all races with a love that is true and sincere, and show that love through deeds and not through the tongue. For the latter had no importance, as the majority of men are in speech well-wishers, while action is the best." You see the kind of actions that Dr. Smith was talking and you are doing here today, trying to promote
Yes.
this whole notion of unity and race
Yes.
unity and coming together is what we need, right? So just sitting and talking about it is not going to solve the problem. We need to all unite, be friends, connect our hearts,
Yes.
and act. And that action really produces the result. And I think Dr. Smith wants to say something.
Oh, yes.
Now, I just wanted to see when you start picking little gems from Abdul Baha, I have to share one. This is out of the book Icons and Reflections on Race, Amity, and the Other Tradition, which people you can find out more about the book on the website. But this is a statement from Abdul Baha about friendship. It's very short. He says, "If you desire with all your heart friendship with every race on earth, your thought, spiritual and positive, will spread.
Yeah.
It will become the desire of others, growing stronger and stronger until it reaches the minds of all men." So, if you desire with your heart. So anyway, thank you all for having me. And I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll see you guys. Dr. Austin in the background. We'll see you and Brittany down in Atlanta in November at the National Race Amity Conference.
Yes, hopefully.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith.
It was wonderful to see you, brother, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you again for accepting the invitation and joining today.
Yes, thank you
I know
so
how busy
much.
you are. Thank you very much.
Peace out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.